It's great to have everybody here again for the second day of the 9th Annual Hawaii Bioeconomy Forum. I would just ask you the restrooms again out the door and to the left. I would ask you to put your phones on either silent or buzz for the purposes of this particular event. Again, a thanks to our sponsors that the list was up earlier. Obviously, all of our speakers, our hosts, the forum committee, in particular, the three elected officials, Speaker Say, who wasn't able to be here yesterday, but is here today, so we're very happy about that. And obviously, Representative Sayama and Representative Kong, who are in and out because there's work being done here at the legislature in this building as well. Hopefully everyone had a reasonably good evening after a really exciting day yesterday, at least an exciting day for me. There was a lot of things I learned, including about the variety of projects and the fact that we have a lot of collaboration going on with a lot of different organizations, both private sector and public sector. All of that was very exciting for me. You could tell by the fact I'm jumping up and down right now how exciting. No, really, it was very exciting. You don't want me jumping up and down, it wouldn't be good. So here we are getting into the second day, a little bit of a different theme, but of course the conversations that will occur both during the break and I'm sure as a follow-on to this particular forum will be very, very helpful as we move forward in both the hydrogen economy and efforts to support the climate change, the activities that we're trying to do in terms of helping in that regard. So we start off today the way we started off yesterday. We start off with Dr. Sungsup Ra, who's the Chief Sector Officer for the Asian Development Bank. Just as you recall yesterday, his presentation largely set the stage for the rest of the presentations and the conversations that we had yesterday. I thought that was rich with information. Today, he will be talking to us about establishing a global high-tech knowledge and the Intensive Agricultural University Network. So without further ado, Dr. Ra.
Thank you for a kind introduction. Yesterday, I talked about the energy transition and also roles of the hydrogen. Today, I will talk about a very different topic. Is on establishing global high-tech, knowledge-intensive agriculture university network. If you turn on the TV, now you will see about so many news is regarding Ukraine crisis and also related food crisis, right? And also, if you turn on TV, always they talk about climate change issue. Has a big issue now. The climate change now impacts on agriculture side very much. A while ago, I also met the Mr. Say a while ago, and then Mr. Say also mentioned Hawaii import 92% of the agricultural product from outside of Hawaii, while you have a vast land here. And the problem we are facing is that not just only climate change and also all those issues, but we have another problem. Nobody wants to work in the agriculture sector, right? Farmers getting old. And then you go to even poor country, Bangladesh, you think that the young people go and work in the farm? No. Not just in the problem in the U.S., not problem in the advanced country, even poor country, young people, they don't want to go to agricultural land. Many students, they graduate from agricultural university, not necessarily means they go to farming. They just go to a government office or some private sector. So this is the challenges that we try to talk today. Next. Oh, me, yeah. Yeah, okay. Here I want to talk about around the 1960 and then to around 85. The agriculture, we have a green revolution that dramatically increased the agriculture productivity, that particularly on the high yield variety, like such as here I can show you wheat, rice, and maize. In cases in the Mexico and Philippines are exemplary. They use the IL-8, is quite the productive rice variety. Investment in hybrid seed and also the fertilizer, pesticide made this breakthrough happen that time. Over the past 50 years, although the population has more than doubled, the production of the cereal crop that tripled, with only 30% in the land area cultivated. In fact, when we study economics, that time we study about Thomas Malthus, the predictions on the agriculture and population, right? But the feminine theory now turn out to be wrong, right? History telling us much of the developing the world was able to overcome the chronic food deficit human being had faced for a long, long time. However, as you know, investment in agriculture dropped off dramatically into the mid-2000s. And then since mid-2000 and the heightened after 2008, you remember we have the food crisis that time. There had been renewed interest in agriculture investment. And then there are a lot of call for next green revolution. For next green revolution, we needed huge investment in technology through perhaps R&D and capital collaboration with private sector. This here, I want to talk about demand and supply side of the emerging challenges. First, demand side, world population is expected to grow almost 10 billion by 2050. Just using the Buddhist economic growth scenario, that would boost the agriculture demand by some like 50% compared to 2013, 10 years ago back. And another problem we are having is that income growth in the low and middle income countries, I'm not talking about US, like poor country, the income growth there would hasten dietary transition toward higher consumption of the meat, fruit, and vegetables. It's already happening relative to that of the cereals, and requiring commensurate shifts in outcome. Another funny thing happened in the agriculture sector, alarming things happening here, is that almost all private research take in high income country, and it has grown in India and China. In fact, while it has grown in India and China, but it's still a long way to go. The UN, they recommended overall government R&D expenditure for science technology of around at the 1% level of the national GDP, but many developing countries cannot meet that the requirement. Here, I want to think together with you, what would be future of the agriculture in particularly Asia Pacific. Perhaps we can expand it this one global level. Traditionally, agriculture, when you look at it, Green Revolution, we were able to increase the productivity through three input: labor, second, putting more resources, like fertilizer and irrigation, better hybrid seed, kind of thing. Basically, I would say is a factor or input-driven, input-based agriculture. We had it. That's a traditional approach. But now we need it. Knowledge-intensive agriculture, high-tech, knowledge-intensive agriculture. Now we need increased productivity and value addition through data and precision to innovate and also innovation. Why? Because traditional way, the traditional input-driven, the productivity, just already S-curve, there's mature. We cannot do that because of climate change. So many issues I mentioned about also degradation. We need to move to more nature-friendly and eco-friendly agricultural system. That's the only way to go. For that, we need data, precision, and innovation. Given with this kind of thought, I try to figure out how we can really address these challenges and seize opportunity. There are many different ways to do it. Traditional approach is that, look, we go to the farmer, educate them, right? We improve XX. I work in the developing world for more than 20 or 30 years. Most of them not working. Putting some resources there, that's just or just putting the subsidy, not so much results. Among a lot of pathway, a lot of scenario, here I am proposing that this is time we have to invest in agriculture education. I will explain more on that. First, challenge we are facing is that this agriculture part, the farmers and all these people, here is very much fragmented. It's very difficult to come up with a consensus view. Very, very conservative. You go to farmer, many of them very conservative. And then majority farmers in Asia Pacific are smallholders, very different from US, very different from Canada. The smallholder farmer, we need to deal with it. And this also, traditional agriculture education does not attract youth. I think the 60 agriculture, Department of Agriculture, College of Agriculture, one of most competitive one, attracted top talented students. But now, the Department, College of Agriculture is like bottom line, not so much popular. Students rather want to go to IT, rather want to go to the business, other one. They don't want to go even College of Agriculture. But another important thing, perhaps it happened in the US also, traditional agriculture extension services not working. In the many countries, they have extension services, empowered the engineers, technicians. Any farmers going to them ask a question? No. What they do, they go to the private sector, their stores, and ask them what to do with my tractor. They also ask the advice on the fertilizer, all those. So therefore, extension service there, many of them is public, state subsidy driven, but they don't go. Nobody goes there. And the extension services, they cannot even get the engineers also. It's very difficult to attract them. We have so many problems I talk, but this is not the place to talk about only problem. I want to talk about what we can do. What are the opportunities here? Opportunity, I thought about 3 or 4. First, now the new technology and data information for agriculture, meteorological data, and then data on soil, all those data on water consumption. Also we know now the plant behavior, when they need water, right? So this one gives the opportunity. We can perhaps, with the less input, we can have more productivity. And also less land, we can have a much better productivity. Interesting part of the developing country, the youth, they like to go to the higher education. Not necessarily they want to go higher education. Their family want them to go higher education because many of them, they are the first generation. In their family, nobody went to the university. So it's a family business. They want to send the kid to go to university because the secondary education enrollment is now improved very much, like 60% level. So therefore, when they graduate, the expectation is naturally they want to go to the university. Not necessarily they will choose to go to College of Agriculture, but they wanted to go to university. Another one I can see in the agriculture, the food agriculture sector, is that rise of the industry in the food and related services. Often we look at agriculture as like farm, they're working there. But just I thinking about analogs of the manufacturing sector from all the value chain. Each of the value chain we can think about kind of services, right? It's happening already, even happening in China. China, even Xinjiang, in this area, when they are at the initial like seeding the stage, they're using now the drones. Why? Very simple. Even they cannot get also manpower to work, right? So already happening. It's very interesting. Now, role of a farmer is different. Should be different from old days. Usually, a farmer, you're thinking they were just digging soil and then do something. Now, the farmer, we just projected as the manager of our factory, and then you get services here and there. We need to create such an ecosystem and value chain. But many of the countries, this value chain, I think is emerging or they don't have it. By the way, this happened not just on the U.S. or on some big country. Maybe U.S. even more difficult, but happening in China. The value chain already, I see that. Service provider for like using drone, for the pesticide. They're already happening. Even happening in Korea, even happening in the developing country context. What I try to call for is that revamp that for this kind of opportunity, can we seize through agriculture education? No. Some agriculture university, you go Cornell University, they talk only science. They are not talking about farming. And you go to maybe low level, they're talking about something, but not necessarily students go to agriculture. What they are really delivering is not really relevant to for the addressing this global food crisis. So what I'm calling for, we need to revamp the agriculture education, particularly in higher education. When I talk about agriculture education, there are many different ways. We can do it vocational education, we can do it in secondary, but here I'm talking about higher education because we need a set of engineers. In the many developing countries, they need few people who really getting into this. So here I propose this. So I propose globally, we created a high-tech, knowledge-intensive agriculture university network called GHAN. And then objective is first, prepare future leaders in high-tech, knowledge-intensive agriculture. This is to also promote agriculture innovation. And also, we want to redesign the agriculture production system for sustainable development paths. Focus will be I decided no longer call farmer as a farmer. I want to call them as agro-entrepreneur because what I'm saying is very different from the farmer. We need now entrepreneurs in agriculture sector. So we want to promote, groom the agro-entrepreneurs who can work in the farmer, who can work in the government, and who can work also Congress so that they can change the whole ecosystem, redesign whole this one. The harness or the best of the scientific knowledge and technology breakthrough through the education. And also, very important one is that university shouldn't work alone. They have to work with the private sector and industry. That's extremely important because they got to be relevant, whatever they're doing. So I'm thinking about 500 million putting into this sector. From ADB side, I'm already working on. I talking to World Bank, I talking to African Development Bank. It's not necessarily public money. You can also put the money, work on this. By the way, money is not all. I'll come to this later. It's what we want to do, we redesign curriculum. Curriculum not just only study for study. They have to really go field and really do experiential learning become very important here. By the time they graduate, like doctor, medical school, they should be able to directly work, right? Most of the university, when they graduate 4 years, they complete. Then when they go to company, they have to start it again because company cannot use them at all, right? That's what keep complaint we are getting. But this sector, like medical school though, you go medical school, once they complete, they can do something. We should train that way. Like medical school, after 4 years they finish, immediately they can start with something. Start up, agriculture, the entrepreneur. When we talk about agriculture, it's not talking about agriculture only, maritime. Hawaii, you have a huge potential, horticulture. I'm talking all of this. Faculty, we have to redevelop faculty. We need a different type of faculty here. And then the supporting also entrepreneurship development because we want groomed entrepreneur, not just only someone working somewhere else. Strengthen academic industrial linkage. And also, the university also, they have to learn each other. So try to now create a network so that they can partner together. For example, Hawaii or university can partner with someone in the Vietnam, right? Groom them, right? That I think the one of the option we can have it. Here, what are the high-tech technologies for the precision agriculture? We already know that two part I'm thinking. Usually we talk about this, then talk about technology, but I want to really talk about the emphasis, importance of knowledge and skill, all those, the management skill, because now the agriculture farmers, this entrepreneur is a manager, they are the CEO, so we have to train them, they can manage and finance. Logistics become more important, right? You know that about 30% of agriculture product, that now they wasted it during the logistics, right? Before go to table. So if we can really reduce even that 30%, that's a huge boost, right, to meet the food crisis. But do we have any? No. So storage, because of that, extremely important. In the poor country, most of the agriculture, because of we don't have a cold storage, just all gone. And as I spoke to you, not just the learning in the laboratory, it's very important to really have a field experience. So experiential learning, very important. Remote sensing, fertigation, digital twin, yesterday we talked about that, also very important here. The weather analytic, the big data analytic, the biotech, robotic. We are talking, this is already happening in the industry, even in the Silicon Valley, Napa Valley, already happening, right? Napa Valley, when they get the grape, they already use a robot to get grapes. And then even in the strawberry farm, they use already robotic, because you don't have now the people who walk to pick up the strawberry, right? So they're using that. Now the development here happening is just phenomenal. But our education, we don't really benefit from here. Here, I propose establishing global high-tech, knowledge-intensive agriculture university network, in short term GHAN, GHAN. So we'll have a global hub, and then look at it, the whole country like this, like Asia, Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa is extremely important, right? South Asia is important. This is where that the population really grows so rapidly, but they can a lot of stunting nutrition problem because of food deficit there. Right? So we try to do that. Each of them we can have a regional hub, and then we can have it linked. Oh my God, there's a lot of fantastic feedback I had it from the many government and this, but because of pandemic and this slowed down, and then many university they raise a hand, they want to be like usually the University of Illinois, Cornell, Georgia Tech. Even Singapore government raised hand that they want to host hub, global hub. But I thought that Singapore cannot be global in the agriculture sector because they are more urban. Of course, China they want it, but the political issue there. I think the U.S. also. So I thought this one various way, but we are moving. We try to also garner support from you also, because I know here many important people sitting here, so we can think about that. Hawaii can be also very good places because you are center. There's politically less contentious in the sense. Now, many of you thinking, oh, why are you guys talking about only dream, right? Talking, all those. It's not really like that. This is already we are doing that because from ADB we are now working with the Bangladeshi government, and then Korea put about 63, and then the ADB total amount will be around 100. The government put about 20, so $120 million type project. We are thinking with with the Bangladesh Agriculture University. This is a very good university. It's a number one, and then like top students still go to this university, but these are like in the U.S. like Berkeley, very very good university, and then all of them when they graduate they become government officer, and then they go to their nobody working in the farming sector. So we try to reorient this university. Now, first of all, we're doing, we have some MOU. We encourage them to have MOU with the Seoul National University. Seoul National University is interesting because this university, around 1960, 70, got the support from the Minnesota University here after war. And then they got Minnesota University, they trained the faculty. So they know that history, experience. They want to do the same thing to the other developing member country. So it's like, the grandfather is of Minnesota, and then they become a father, and then they want to do something. So this BAU we want to establish as the South Asian regional hub to accelerate the speed of the technology adoption and R&D in the South Asia. And now you will ask me then question, what happened in the then advanced country? Harrisburg University is one example in the Pennsylvania. I wonder how many of you know Harrisburg. Harrisburg is, by the way, state capital of the Pennsylvania. It's not Philadelphia. So it's a very interesting university, Harrisburg. This is a private, but I think people in the city, they established this. It's like almost semi-state university. They got funds from the Congress, the state Congress. They give the several million to them, and then start this small laboratory. What happened? When they decided to develop this one, the smart the education program for college student, master degree student, I think. And then the Hershey, the chocolate company Hershey, they came to them and say, look, I have a lot of land in the Harrisburg. Why don't we work together? Well, because Hershey come from the Harrisburg. They have a lot of land. And say, I will give I heard it, 1/3 or 2/3, the 50% of the land. And then what they want is not money. According to Hershey, that they needed talent. We work together, human power. So when this Harrisburg, they have a graduate student, and they can work with Hershey and do something. And then also the other, the global high-tech agriculture company, like Netherlands, top company, they are coming, and then also in the Canada and U.S. based also agriculture, ag-tech company coming to Harrisburg now. It's become now, university will be center, hub, and then around there a lot of other farm coming already. So Harrisburg around that area will become like the one of the very important like green Silicon Valley, something like that. They are attracting this. So I'm talking here in Hawaii. I had the virtual meeting with Mr. Say some time back. Hope that Hawaii can think about this kind of vision and dream. Transform the Hawaii as the agricultural hub here, because you are in the right places. I didn't know before I came, but I understand you have vast land and opportunity. So here I came here mainly because I'm talking this because mainly I want you to think about this one in the Hawaii the context. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ra. That's terrific. And you never know what you're going to see necessarily in some of these presentations. I would note, whether it's coincidentally or not, Pennsylvania is recently at its legislative and governmental level identified or created a state farm bill. So our U.S. Congress is in the process every 5 years of going through and doing a farm bill, and our current Congresswoman Jill Dakuda is actually on the Agricultural Committee in the House of Representatives in the U.S. Congress, and will be participating in that process. But Pennsylvania actually has gone ahead of time within their state to develop something that is a comprehensive perspective on the work that you were talking about, and of course Harrisburg being in Pennsylvania, the connections there and the potential investment there with a government that is interested and has a plan is really very interesting. And in Hawaii, the counties, I being a county official, have had conversations with our new, well, still interim, but we anticipate soon to be confirmed chair of the agriculture department here at the state level, about, in fact, doing something similar in terms of an agricultural plan, if you will, a comprehensive plan. So we'll see where this goes, but that is very interesting information and something that we're definitely talking about in Hawaii County, if nothing else. So our next speaker is Dr. Nguyen Ninh, and he probably, to this esteemed audience, is someone that needs no introduction, but I'm up here, so I might as well do that. He is the chairman of the Center for Environmental Research, Education, and Development, or CERED. Frankly, his honors are too many to list. I was trying to figure out which one I would identify, but there are way too many of them. But I would say it's pretty impressive to be a contributor to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, as Dr. Ninh has been in the past. He is going to be speaking to us about the Vietnam and Korea Partnership on Hydrogen Projects. And Dr. Ninh, please.
Thank you very much. I think I standing is better. Yeah. So I was in Hawaii first time, visited Hawaii 33 years ago, 1988, 89. And Hawaii is a very, very, smooth. And also Maui is a very poor island. And from that time, I come back frequently. And as 10 years now, so from Bioeconomy conference, I come here, every year, nearly every year. I brought a lot of the people from Vietnam, businessmen and scientists, and some pictures about history, some bioeconomy when we attended with the Kevin Say, man, and some other. So I think this conference focus on the hydrogen. I have heard hydrogen first time, I think more than 30 years ago, in Germany and the West, and attended the international meeting on climate change in Germany in 90, and in Texas in 91. I have heard the hydrogen first time. And I invited the expert from hydrogen from Switzerland to Vietnam in 91 to present in Hanoi about the hydrogen. And nobody know. So this is the reason. So when I follow this hydrogen, it's more than 30 years. And also I follow the, the Honda hybrid, project on hydrogen car. And so different thing. And I know that so many problems with the hydrogen technology. And I am very glad to hear now, yesterday, that now, commercialization is more feasible and applicable. And I am very glad to see that. And when one time, if this is successful in Hawaii or even other countries, Korea, I just see no trouble to develop other country, as Vietnam or other country. I think in the future is our future energy. But I have been working with climate change nearly 35 years, from the first IPCC, when they established in 1888 in Geneva. So I follow this one, and so Vietnam during 30 years. So many things changes, and I take Vietnam as my case study for developing, and and develop with the adaptation to climate change. So I show in this workshop, in many other international workshops, many aspects of Vietnam case study. From the seaculture, agriculture, energy, mangrove forest, so social problem. And I think today, this one of the topics is very important for the world. Last year, COP27. So they mentioned, very important for managed forests. Because we know that, the carbon dioxide absorption, a half absorption by the ocean, and the half absorption up for land use and the grass and the forest. So that's for developing country, including Vietnam. This managed forest is very important. This is the reason why last year G7 gave 27 billion US dollar to Indonesia and 16 billion US dollar to Vietnam for protect forests and develop, the managed forest. So I think this important, issue for the world before anything that because this is recycle resources and also this biomass energy. And I think that I would like to introduce this some, the development of the managed forest in Vietnam, especially. So the next slide, please. So this just we know that's no in this century. So we reach 10 billion people in the earth. So how to nurture this order? So regarding the climate, security. So there are 3 points: this food security, the energy security, and water security. And this, more than 250 countries over the world. Earlier about 30, 40 countries, there are those 3, sources enough: the water, energy, and the food, including Vietnam. And I think this next please. So we think that so we know now the Earth over shortly day. So we know only 200 something. So short and short. So we use more overuse resources. Next please. In general, it's the negative impact of the climate change. We know this how to resilient, the community resilient, and Hawaii is one example for how to resilient to the climate change, because this is the isolated island and remote country, and everything is itself the to produce. So I think the resilient community in Hawaii is we have to consider each commune in business supply chain as an ecosystem, and Hawaii is a very good example for that. Next. So we know all this development goal. So overall, we see this, and we also all countries have to follow. And I think this the country as a state of Hawaii is one of example. One we can account how many goals we can follow, and we can carry out in this island. Next, please. Now, I about Vietnam case. So we see this Vietnam case, NDC, Vietnam. So how to account, how to develop this scenario, and how to attend. So we committed, carbon zero in 2050, and in the whole sector, whose sector is the most important, and how to protect this. So we see that the next slide, please. Now I think in this green growth strategy program, we know this now Vietnam now put in the mid GDP at the moment, and we try to move over the average, the GDP, over the GDP. So we cannot expect so early, but if we can wisely move to green economy, so we can one of the country for at least leading in those countries, least developed country, who can develop the green economy. So this we try to do this. I think this whole of the program and whole strategy. So Vietnam try to do this because we know the geopolitical now earlier. So everybody go about the China +1 economy, and who is +1? So many countries focus Vietnam now is +1. So that's so we can only this good +1 if we develop the green economy, I think. Next, please. This whole economy sector need involve, mitigate, and adapt to climate change. So from agriculture to forestry and for the urban development. And this the whole concept of Vietnam, to try to boost this overall. So we develop, the country 100 million people and different area, different coastal zone, different mountain area. So complicated, but we try the best to move whole sector the forward. Next, please. And you see I think for energy sector, so not just only biomass, but we develop also the solar farm, also the wind farm, and also the ocean wind farm. We have those very large area of the marine resources, but it's many problems with the other country. And that's the ocean, wind farmer is not so easy to develop. So we try the best to isolate some other the places and develop the different area, so inland and offshore. Next, please. I think in general, in the world now, so every project, ADB knows so well. So we need ESG, all green finance, green investment, so ESG. So now we prepared ESG to all enterprises in Vietnam. So we ask enterprises to follow ESG. That's the green finance for any project. So not just the big company, but also all company, we try to set up the criteria, the condition, and they have to follow the ESG in all project over country level. Next, please. I would like to say about the rubber sector in Vietnam. The rubber sector in Vietnam, so in Asia, one of the leading country to produce rubber, tree. We have about, so this the list. I think it's the what I say. We have about 1 million hectare of the tree, rubber tree. 25 years, 30 years, this finish the latex, and then we can use the wood. So the wood after 25 years, now this the wood quality. So that we can say this is good quality but cheap price, because we use the latex already, and that's the wood is you can use. But the wood, this for manage forestry, this the wood quality, because 25 years. This cellulose is density. So that's the that is the strong side of the rubber wood. Next slide, please. Now we can see from the value of the rubber tree. We can use the furniture. We can do the plywood. We can do otherwise even the biomass, the wood pellet, and so many products from that one. And the key point is the good quality but cheap price. And this the make million job for the people. Next, please. The rubber forest, so this meet the criteria for forest. I think this could be seen as the carbon sink about nearly 40 ton per hectare per year. So we have 1 million hectare of the rubber tree, and earlier we have to replant at least 25,000 hectares. So we have about 4-5 million cubic meter wood quality and cheap price. So I think this we can use this money and export other countries. Next, please. Now this roughly we try to organize the managed forest and also get the international certificate for the wood product. And we have the during last the COVID in the last 3 years, the latex is very increased the value, because they use that for the health and for other that. And it's very important. The Vietnam rubber wood is a natural latex. When we reduce the fossil fuel, so we need the natural latex, and we need the recycle managed forest as a rubber tree in Vietnam. So I think this is a very strong style, and this a lot of, so is minimum now we get $10 billion per year, but if we have do well, maybe 20 times more. Next, please. Now that's I think this is a general picture I want to say today about this one, and this one is the key issue for the UN confirm for this, because this the carbon sink is one of the important before we develop other technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nin. Really appreciate that. So on this schedule right now is that we have a technology panel with members from NCAP, eCombustible, Effectil, and Evertech. Now, I'm not sure who's actually running this technology panel. So I invite the members of those groups to come on up here. Hopefully, somebody knows what you're doing.
I got the short straw.
I think so.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much. There we go. I'll go on this side so we can balance everything out.
If you all could introduce yourselves again, that would be helpful.
President Stuff? Yeah.
Yes. I'm Sergio Leiras from eVortex International. We are consultants for improvement of new technologies for hydrogen and energy products.
I'm Michael Upshaw from the Water Energy Group, and we're basically responsible for being able to shepherd the people to bring the technology to you folks today in Hawaii.
Hi, this is Pablo Icart. I am the Chief Business Officer of eCombustible, in charge of expanding the eCombustible around the world.
Aloha again. This is Bilal here from NCAP Holdings. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the group.
Aloha, I am Jack Katz. I am the COO of Infusion Energy America, part of NCAP Group.
There we go. Hi. I believe I have to say aloha. Glenn Scott, CEO of MIC3 International, based out of Malta, with our flagship product, Effectly.
Does that work? Okay, so we're here. Who's going to be the first to volunteer a question that we can possibly answer? Architect.
Been talking to a number of friends of mine about this conference, trying to get them down here, and they're all too busy. But basically, one of the questions that keeps on coming up is, do they use electrolysis to get hydrogen? Is it that basic?
Well, in our case, yes, that's the first step that we do. We do a normal electrolysis, but we improve the way that we do the electrolysis. We do that reducing the amount of electricity that we need to separate the hydrogen with the oxygen, with impulse that we, frequencies that we created, okay, electrical frequencies that we patented. We don't use the electricity in all the cell stack at the same time. We just do it by one, by impulse, and that's allow us to increase 30%, around 30% the efficiency of doing the electrolyzer. But that's the first step that we do. On the second step, we also do electromagnetic impulse. We patent some frequencies, and depending on the temperature, depending on the frequency that we choose, and the time that we are going to apply those frequencies to the hydrogen that we created in our electrolyzer, that improve the energy content that we have per cubic meter of our combustible. To summary, pretty much we put, let's say, 1, and we have an output of 6, 7, okay, in terms of energy. But we have to be clear on this. That doesn't mean that we are going against the law of the thermodynamic, that we are breaking any law here, that we are creating energy, that we think that we are God. Have nothing to do with that. If you see that in a balance of energy, that's the question, I guess, that you're asking. In the balance of energy, we certify with U.S. company with very good reputation, like Sargent and Landy or Intertech. We certify for the first time in history that we have a balance of energy at 872% or 570, depending on the frequency that we are using, we can have different efficiencies. But the thing is that in that balance of energy, it's not that we are creating energy, it's that we are obtaining the energy from the water that is inside. So it's not just to see what input and the output, it's to see what is the energy that is in the water, and that's where we are obtaining that energy. Okay. Actually, the principle, that's a repeat question. I'm sorry if I'm extending too much in my answer, but our research is coming from Irving Lamour, that was a Nobel Prize in 1932. And in 1926, he was talking about all this theory about to separate the hydrogen into atomic hydrogen, and then when they combine together, the amount of energy that is going to release is going to be 900 times more than the one that you have to use to separate them. So pretty much it's similar, it's related to that. It's also related to the 0-point energy, the theory of the 0-point energy, which is the energy that there is in the space, and we are obtaining from that also the energy, and that's where we have the efficiency. And the most important thing, I understand the academic part of this, but we concentrate more in the commercial part of this, which is to prove that we have it, that we can implement it, that we can commercialize, and that is working in the real world. Okay.
First off, I want to thank everybody for participating and share the information. It's extremely valuable. Pablo, I do have a question. Are lights on here and cooling the room? A lot of people have jackets on, so we know we have good air conditioning in here. Is coming from HECO, the power generation company for supplying the state of Hawaii, or the island of Hawaii. And the same is true on the other islands as well. We have a utility that supplies the entire island through the grid. However, I can go down to Home Depot and buy a 5 kW power generator that allows me to create electricity in a very small situation remotely. In the processes and the technologies that you have, is there going to be that kind of scalability that allows small people, I'm a farmer myself, that could utilize the technology in that much smaller type of a setup that has greater flexibility?
Yeah, that's a great question. The short answer would be yes, it can be done. Actually, the size of our plant depends just on the number of cells that we have. And each of our cells, and that's one of the beauty of our technology, is that to give you an idea, the smallest module that we produce right now, it has 2 containers, and each one has 36 cells. But all of them, they produce hydrogen and oxygen independently. So it doesn't matter if there is a problem in one of them, the other 71 cells, they are going to keep working. And because that, just with one cell, you can produce just hydrogen and oxygen, and then you go with a small engine to produce electricity, and you could have that. So it's not a question of the technology, if we can do it or not. It's already done. It's just a question of if it makes sense right now for a company to start in that direction, going to the final consumer, or if it makes sense to try to change the problem that we have in the planet and to go to the big, where is the big volume, where are the big consumer, where are the big people that they are producing all this CO2 to the atmosphere, and to see if we can change that. So the answer is that we started with big projects just because of that reason, not because the technology is not allowed to do it in a small. And then the size of the cells can vary also. I mean, right now probably one cell is too much for a group of houses, but we can do the cells smaller and then produce the same. And the idea is a way of the frequency that we apply and the way that we do the electrolyzer, and then you have the fuel. And then the fuel, you can use it in any engine. It could be a large one or it could be a small one. So there is not a problem with the technology. But I'm afraid that we cannot attend right now those small projects because of the situation of the starting of a company like this. Thank you.
Ken?
Thank you all for all being here and giving you guys, wonderful presentations. The question I had was mostly addressed in terms of, we're talking about battery and storage capacity and whatnot. Because you're looking at, using hydrogen as part of the batteries, as far as I understand, does that decrease the level of lithium and cobalt that's needed for those things in terms of looking at it from the supply chain aspect, in terms of less cobalt, less lithium for those types of batteries, or do I have that wrong? And then how is that in relation to, I think it's about a 45-year shelf life cycle, and solar is about 30%. So is there kind of a plan with that afterwards with those batteries?
I believe that's an end cap.
That's for you.
Yeah. So as we mentioned yesterday, the solution that we bring to the table no longer uses any of these chemical elements as the storage for power. We're using an electrostatic field as opposed to electrochemical reactions based on graphene.
If I can just expand on that a little bit. So traditionally, the world's used to using an electrochemical form of storing energy, a redox reaction. This is due to the fact that scientists were successful, in particular John Goodenough, who developed the first lithium-ion battery, the one that we use conventionally today. The world's generally been working towards making lithium-ion more and more advanced and trying to make it more efficient. We took a different route. Granted, initially it was a big risk, trying to work with electrostatic forms of storing energy, but we believe it's now paid off because ultimately this is the way to store energy efficiently and successfully. Talking about hydrogen-based projects, we are working on a number of projects. We're hopefully going to be working with the gentleman here as well after this event, but we believe the combination of electrostatic energy storage and hydrogen energy generation is the future. And we believe that this will be the conventional means of generating and storing energy moving forward. Electrostatic energy storage both is very good at frequency regulation, harmonics filtration, etc. Inherently, by nature, supercapacitors are actually functionally resolving these types of issues. So they work very well in these types of energy generation.
So, Pico has this massive storage facility going in my neighborhood. So how would you compare to that in terms of size, capacity, longevity, everything?
That's a very good question. So as a rule of thumb, and we discussed this yesterday, chemical batteries are oversized. So I'm assuming what I see in the a picture here is energy storage in containers, which is very common, right? So first and foremost, this is an exceptionally good question, by the way, and a good case study to present before you. Energy storage at this level is significantly oversized for the following reasons. One, to accommodate for the fact that the batteries need to have a longer period to be able to last. So to do so, they don't discharge fully at 100%. So the DOD will be restricted to maybe 70%. So you need to have more storage to accommodate for that. Secondly, you need to cannibalize, or you tend to cannibalize energy in heating or cooling to ensure that the batteries operate within certain temperature parameters to optimally work. You probably recall from your old days in your science class, you also recall when you expose chemical to, or any chemical to a high or a low temperature, can become volatile. So inherently, any chemical battery, any lithium-ion battery becomes volatile when you expose it to a high or low temperature. In fact, in lower temperatures, they degrade even more quickly. Other than this, you're also oversizing to accommodate for inefficiencies, thermal runway, discharge, etc., etc. So you tend, we believe, to oversize where you are trying to put a megawatt hour of storage or your requirements of megawatt hour, you tend to put 1.2, 1.3, and in some instances 1.5 megawatt hours of energy storage. With electrostatic graphene-based supercapacitor, you are the nameplate capacity. You do not need to oversize to accommodate for cooling or heating, or oversize to accommodate for depth of discharge or inefficiencies. A kilowatt hour is a kilowatt hour delivered. So a kilowatt hour of storage, nameplate capacity, is a kilowatt hour delivered, literally. So it's a 99% round trip efficiency. So you would have much less energy storage requirement, less footprint. So that's the first initial thing straight off the bat. The second thing is that on a large installation such as this, you generally have to mollycoddle and replace the batteries every couple of years because of their lifespan. Now, it's quite sad to say that this has a huge impact on the environment. Those batteries need to be landfilled. We discussed yesterday the damage that they could potentially cause, et cetera, et cetera. So we have an energy storage now that will last at cell level up to 45 years. That's significant because you can constantly just keep remaking the outer parts and the electronic components to maintain a 45-year life of about 90% of the battery. We go up to 25 years in warranty, so we assure you that our entire module will last up to 25 years, which is a similar lifespan to, I think, most PV panels today. So I think I've answered most of your question. The only other thing I'd like to say is that there has been incidents in the United States in particular. There was an incident in Arizona with Arizona Public Services a number of years ago where, due to an imbalance in the cells on one of these, and this is quite common because they're high voltage systems, one of the containers caught fire. Emergency services team attended to the fire. Unfortunately, fires caused by lithium-ion batteries are not conventional fires and need to be treated in a certain way. I think there were 9 emergency services members who were significantly injured, 2 of them critically, due to the fire that was caused by the lithium-ion batteries. This is becoming more and more common, whether it's in microgrids, containerized solutions, electric vehicles, electric buses. So this is another factor that we should also consider when we're looking at these type of installations. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, could you repeat that again?
How do digital twins manage this whole aspect?
Do you want to answer that? I'll leave the hard questions to
Please repeat the digital twins.
I think, yeah. Let me grab this one. That's the hospital
I thought we
pass.
just received some sort of nickname or something.
Jack was obviously paying attention to yesterday's.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was there at Glenn's speech.
No, guys. I think that the digital twins play a major role in the sense that all the technology that you put down, as you scale this across geographies and different operational areas, you need to understand what you have and where it's deployed and how it's performing in its given parameters from the manufacturers. So I think the important part here would be is the maintenance of these things, and we find that in our cell phone customers. We currently are maintaining, as I mentioned in my presentation yesterday, 30,000 sites. But the actual equipment on the site is one part of it. The next part is the orchestration of all the people and the processes and the just dealing with the infrastructure. That's where a lot of the inefficiency or costs start rising. So the digital twins, I think, will play a significant role in giving you that single pane of glass, understanding what you have, and you'll react differently to those scenarios when there's a fire like that. How should we deal with that? And what you will also find, and it was one of the points that came up yesterday, is that you've already got that infrastructure, I guess, that's live at the moment or that has been rolled out.
Currently being built.
Okay, so that decision was taken, before everybody else came along, and next year there will be other technology that you'll be deploying. So as critical infrastructure operators in governments, you will be required to maintain old equipment, new equipment, and I think what the digital twins have to do is give you that single pane of glass for all types of equipment. When we did this with the cell phone companies, they inherited everything that procurement departments had bought 10 years ago, plus everything into the future. So the digital twin needs to be completely flexible enough, and the operating platform needs to be flexible enough to deal with all of those different systems that you deploy, and whether it's hydrogen production through to battery or through to generators or anything else that's out there, you need to be able to deal with that. So I think it will significantly help your efficiency in the operation.
Sure.
So can I add to that?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay, so I do hydrogen transportation.
Okay.
And I've been wondering why the heck we waited so long to do ultracapacitors instead of batteries, because they don't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Because in transportation, it's all about weight.
Yes.
So you're making an airplane, you're making a car, or whatever.
Yes.
And so why do you want to put even lithium batteries, which are fairly light in terms of batteries?
Yeah.
They're still too heavy.
Yes.
And if you don't think so, then why are none of the Class 8 trucks being made to run on batteries? They're
Okay.
all hydrogen fuel cells, because it makes sense.
Yeah.
So the ultracapacitor is the answer, but you also have the fact that we're trying to get rid of carbon in those. And what's graphene? It's carbon.
You're trying to get carbon out of the atmosphere.
Yeah. So, but you're capturing carbon in all kinds of places, and you're making your stuff out of carbon.
So that's a very interesting point that you just made. You may probably recall, again, going back to the old days, I don't want to remind everyone of their time at science class, but there's a general rule of thumb. You can transfer energy from one source to another. You can't generally get rid of it. It's the rules. So we're not pumping carbon back into the atmosphere. Carbon's always going to be there. This is a case of where it's put and how it's treated. Okay, so carbon can be burnt and then it turns into a different element, etc. What we are trying to do ultimately, and what our end goal would be, to capture carbon from the air and convert it into a process of making a cell that could be used. So that's the end goal. So that would actually help the environment rather than cause a detriment. Yeah.
We could be making, instead of trying to stick carbon back in the ground or sequester it someplace, why aren't we making ultracapacitors out of that carbon?
So, okay, let me try and answer both questions and tell you a small story of how we started and how we got to where we are today. The ultimate goal has always been EVs. We've always known that the EV market would be the behemoth in this entire affair. The inventor, we talked about him yesterday, he had a passion for developing batteries or energy storage for EVs. And he wanted to start off in that direction. So you recall we talked about the company whose name begins with a T, who own a social media platform whose name begins with a T, whose name we're not going to mention today. Well, it was because of this company that we actually took a back seat in the early days. They were also working on supercapacitor technology. They got wind of us, and the rest remains confidentially buried under ground somewhere in a desert in Las Vegas. But and unfortunately, we may have also been buried with those documents had we gone ahead with the deal, but we didn't. The point being is that in the early days, we realized that the EV industry, and don't forget, we're talking about 2013 and 14, was a completely different landscape to the EV industry of today. At that time, it was generally dominated, and if I could use the word or the term bullied, by the conventional car manufacturers who operate in an oligopolistic market, if I've said that correctly. So it was very difficult to make an entry into that industry, especially as a new tech, and come along and claim that you've got something that's going to completely change the paradigm in the way that vehicles are going to operate. So what we decided to do in the early days was to focus. So after this initial meeting with the gentleman who owns the company that begins with a T, who owns a social media platform, whose name begins with a T, whose name we're not going to mention, we receded back and we decided two things. The first would be that we would take on an institutional investor to protect us. And we did that. We took on a utility company by the name of Northwestern. They became a shareholder, and they took an equity position in our company. That was just basically to get some kind of protection and understand how this world works, the corporate world. The second decision that we decided to make was to work on the stationary market in infrastructure in particular and in industrial application. So, for instance, in BTS mobile phone towers, UPS backup, data center backup, etc. We saw this as a low-hanging fruit, and somewhere where we could essentially prove to the world that our product, and we kept getting told this is too good to be true. There has to be some fault in this. I often, when people say this to me, I often say to them, it's like when Henry Ford went to the world and tried to convince them to move away from horse and cart and go to the car. And they would say to him, well, how does the ROI compare to a horse? And he had to explain it's a completely different dimension. And we're doing the same. But you can't do that until you've actually proven to the world in physical application. So we waited for about 4 years before we had at least 15,000 of our modules installed for a period of time with data coming back and forth. And some of the oldest installations were in South Africa, then in the United States. I actually forgot to mention yesterday that we have installations in Hawaii as well. We had them here for about 4 years. They've been working seamlessly. So we can provide that data now to the world. And once we had done that, we then waited for all of the ducks to line up, essentially, and the inventor started working on an EV version of the cell. Now, here's answering your question. The one problem that supercapacitors or ultracapacitors face once you've cracked the code of linear discharge and balancing, cell balancing, etc., is energy density. So supercapacitors or ultracapacitors, as they're known, are extremely bad when it comes to energy density. So we have, at the moment, a cell which we call 3,000 farads. It's about this big. Its equivalent, generally in the market, is the size of a 500 ml Coca-Cola can. So we developed a patent in energy density in supercapacitors. We further developed that for the use of electric vehicles, made a vibration-proof, solid-state-based cell. We were below 90 kilowatt hours per kg, 90 watt hours, sorry, right? Is that the right term? Yeah, 90 watt hours per kg initially. With our EV version, we're 460 watt hours per kg today. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the most energy-dense cell in the world, and we have it ready for commercial deployment. So 460 watt hours per kg compared to other lithium technologies that haven't reached close to 200 or 210 watt hours per kg. So we're more than double now as of today. But that process took time. And we wanted to get to the market having all of the boxes ticked or checked and having all of the elements ready so that the technology wouldn't be further questioned. And we're here today. So to answer your question, we had to get to this stage, and we wanted to have a product that had a holistic approach to all of the issues around the electric vehicle market. I hope I've answered both of your questions.
Yeah, in fact, I'd like to add that I'm probably one of the few people that have used ultracapacitors in the state.
Right.
And I've just been wondering why the heck it's taking so long to have it.
Well, You're welcome. Something else I'd like to point out, when we first patented the IP about 2018, so what is that? Oof, 5 years ago, we believed, and we were told by the inventor, that 5 years' time and other companies will catch up. Some of the people here are from Korea, and we were expecting a couple of companies from Korea to, in fact, catch up, and a few others from the United States. 5 years later, nobody's even close at the moment, unfortunately. It's not an easy job. There are a lot of issues around the way that you control supercapacitors, ultracapacitors. We use software and algorithmic power control to control balancing, to control linear discharge, to control other elements of the supercapacitor, ultracapacitor, and its behavior. And we've actually further developed that. The technology that we're launching and that we presented to you yesterday is an encapsulated supercapacitor cell. So it's actually gone a step further. And it's that constant modification of the technology that's allowed us to keep a step ahead. So as we know, and we keep our ears firmly to the ground, there is no company in the world who have a 100% ultracapacitor or supercapacitor solution for energy storage as of today, other than ourselves.
And if I may just add something to that, as I mentioned yesterday, being open source and allowing the open source community to connect to this type of technology, once an OEM gets a technology to a certain level, the community will always take it to the next level. I was watching an old clip of Steve Jobs when he got fired or left Apple or whatever and went to create Next, and came up with the idea of trying to sell apps through an app store as opposed to shrink-wrap products. It was the same mindset change that had to change, which is, again, what we've been battling with over the last 15 years that we've been developing the platform, is doing this through a semantic ontology is a completely different way of thinking, of dealing with the data. So that kind of rethinking is what the industry is suddenly waking up to now. And whereas before a lot of the manufacturers, car manufacturers and that, it's been this, let's keep the technology closed, and as soon as that opening up, you'll get it to a certain point and then it'll go to the next level. So just it's the same phenomenon that we've experienced.
You have another question?
Yeah, I wanted to add on. I asked you a question
Sure.
yesterday that I think is overlooked a lot in Hawaii, and that is, we don't have big temperature swings here unless you're on the top of one of our mountains.
Yeah.
But on the mainland and in harsh climates, you can have minus 40 degrees temperature.
Yeah.
And tell everybody how ultracapacitors react.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah. So it's been quite an interesting journey in the United States, and I've got to learn about the varying weather conditions that occur here. So I'm going to give you some examples. We have an installation in Alaska in a place called Tidilo Lodge, where temperatures go down to minus 35, 40 degrees Celsius at times. Lithium-ion batteries are extremely volatile in lower temperatures, and hence this off-grid lodge, that's a holiday home, had a lot of problems in the initial stages, and in fact had problems with generators as well. We've had a system deployed there now for 2 years. We've had to go there once just to upgrade the system and put a Wi-Fi port in there so we could monitor it remotely, because 2 years ago when we had deployed the system, there wasn't that functionality. Otherwise, thankfully, we've not had to touch it a single time. The system's working beautifully. It runs during the evening times. It stores energy from solar, stores energy from the generators. It optimizes the generators. It reduces fuel by about 35–40%. So that's one example for you there. Second one is a very interesting one, in fact. It's in Yellowstone National Park. Everybody heard of Yellowstone National Park? Yogi Bear, maybe? You know Yogi Bear, don't you? You look a bit like him, actually. Oh, yeah, I thought so. Anyway, we deployed a system with the same utility company, Northwestern. That was 4 years ago, in fact, in our early days, and it was a microgrid. It's, in fact, powering a solar system, charges it, and it powers a small tourism center. Last year in Yellowstone National Park, some of you may have observed, there was a flood incident. There were a number of microgrids dotted around Yellowstone National Park. They all turned off, other than guess whose? Our system was the only one that stayed on. So inherently, by nature, supercapacitors, ultracapacitors are extremely durable. You can drive a nail through a cell, you can hammer it, you can throw it for hours and hours, you can expose it to very high temperatures. In fact, there are some YouTube videos from some of our resellers who have done this. Don't do that at home, by the way. I don't advise you to, but they have, and the cells still work. In fact, one day I was with the inventor, and I just, off the cuff, asked the question as to what would happen if you put a cell into a water bottle, and he happened to have a water bottle and the cell was there, and he did it in front of me. Don't do that with lithium ion because it will explode. With an ultracapacitor in front of me, I witnessed it didn't explode. So a very durable material. We work with the Department of Defense. We work with several militaries across the world, and they say that lithium ion banks can potentially create an additional hazard when exposed in the field. If you shoot or you bomb, God forbid, a microgrid, as we saw over here, it's going to exacerbate the effect of a bomb. So the last example I'd like to give you is not, in fact, in the United States. It's a site in the Italian Alps called Campana Margherita, not to be mistaken for the pizza. It's an actual place called Campana Margherita. And we've had a system there now for over 4 years. It's a weather base station, 14,000 feet above sea level. The temperature goes down to minus 35. Please forgive me, I don't know the conversion into Fahrenheit, but it's very cold. They used to replace the lead-acid battery system there every 3 months because of the extreme temperatures. For 4 years, 4.5 years almost, we've not had to replace the system once. Okay.
I'm not playing favorites, so I have a question for the board because I know Pablo probably figures I'm not paying attention to the hydrogen guys. But, we're going through a transition, a huge transition. And my perception is that most people haven't done the math to figure out how we switch from carbon-based fuels to green, technology. The mass of the fossil fuel industry, the auto industry, and making this transition, and we're in a big hurry to do it. What can you collectively do together to say, here's how we make the transition. Here's how we can make some jet fuel out of hydrogen and make a little bit now until there's a lot of airplanes running on hydrogen fuel, and then how do we make these transitions a little more seamlessly
You guys start this time.
rather than put the switch on or off and say fuels off, carbon fuels off, everything else on. It's just a huge transition.
Well, I think that.
Let's let them speak.
Oh, it's sorry.
Okay.
Jack's not getting any airtime, forgive him there. We'll let you speak in a minute, Jack. Don't worry.
I had a meeting 6 months ago with General Electric and Siemens to the transition for this kind of technologies like hydrogen or whatever. So they say, okay, we have a product, we have a turbine for run with hydrogen, but the truth is we don't have cost-effective hydrogen to do it. So today, I think that we have this cost-effective for to do it. Siemens, I'm speaking about 6 months ago, so it's not a long time. So, and today we have the possibility to do it. Technologies like e-combustibles and other that we are working, I think it's possible now. And obviously the transition it's not fast. Obviously the big companies need to stay clear that how is the step that we need to make. It's important to make this change, but step by step we can do it.
And if I can add something to that, as a case study in the Dominican Republic, I lived there for 6 years, and I found something very fascinating. From 2006 to 2012, when I was there, gasoline was very, very expensive. It was $7 plus a gallon. So what they did was they started a whole new conversion cottage industry and switching the cars from gasoline to LPG. So it created a whole distribution network where they now made a donut. The LPG was $2 a gallon, so it just made sense. The conversion of the car was somewhere between $1,500 to $2,500. And it was absolutely amazing to see how everybody collectively moved towards that. Now, they were burning fossil fuels, accepted. The fact is, as time goes on, we have 1.5 million vehicles in the islands. I mean, well, what are you going to do by 2040? Ship them off the island? You have to address this issue. And I believe that there's a whole industry available to do. It just takes collectively everybody to getting together. If you have a fuel source, there are, I looked at it, Brad and I, Hammond looked at a plasma converter that would replace a catalytic converter that takes all the NOx out. So this is the type of thing. This is planning, thinking, support. There would have to be federal, state incentive programs, basically like they did at one time, especially in California, the solar panels. It made it available for people. Give a reason for them not to do it. You know, if we ignore the situation, that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to end up one day and go, what do we do? So I think that you're seeing this evolution is now starting to accelerate, and it just takes common sense. Well, Voltaire wrote that. Common sense is not so common. So anyway, so these are things to be considered. Pablo.
I think that one of the most important things to do the energy transition is for people to understand and to have the know-how how it works. I am still impressed that it doesn't matter if you go to all the most developed country in the world, you can go to Japan, you can go to Germany, you can go to places in Europe, to the States, to Australia, and you see that everybody's talking about the hydrogen. And everybody's talking about the hydrogen like it's the future, the green hydrogen. But people are starting to realize, and we were asking this question to them, is what are you going to do with the hydrogen? Because when they talk about hydrogen and they say, well, we are going to open a hub with a new hydrogen plant and we are going to create all this hydrogen, they are talking about the molecular hydrogen. And the question is, who is going to pay for that hydrogen, which is 3 times, 4 times more expensive than the fossil fuel? And second question is how you are going to use it when the equipment, they are not ready for that. And they don't have the answer. They are just thinking the governments or the electricity company, because it's in fashion to talk about the hydrogen, that they have to open these hydrogen plants like mushrooms everywhere. But the answer is that they don't have the customer, nobody's going to pay for the product, and they cannot use it. So know-how is very important for people to understand, to take those decisions. Do they want to go in that direction because it's fashion? And then to do what? Mm-hmm. So I understand that the energy transition, that everybody is aiming to do it and everybody wish to do it as soon as possible, only could happen if you are presenting a fuel that is cost-effective or less cost than the one that you want to replace. Let's face it, nobody wants to pay more. That's the reality. So I've been with the largest company around the world, in India, in Europe, in Asia. All those big companies, when you sit with them, at the end what matters to take the decision is how much is going to be my cost of the energy. And if you tell them that they have to pay more, they say no. They never take the decision. There is no money in the world to pay for the energy if it's going to be more expensive. Until now, and it's not that I want to promote our energy. We are not there. Actually, we have now many projects that we have to understand how to do it, because it's not that we want to promote the combustible, but until now, there is not any fuel that is green, 100% green, and can compete in price and to be cheaper even than the fossil fuel. So now there is no more excuses. If they have to take the decision, they can take it, they can do the transition. But now it's not just We have the people that they created the energy. We have the people that they can deploy, and they can implement this fuel in different reasons, in different places. The beauty of this technology is that you can implement it anywhere in the world. We have projects in the middle of the desert with mining industry. We have projects in islands. We have projects, and they give it to them the independence, because as long as you have access to water, you're going to have independence of energy. So that's the real transition. So the technology exists. The answer is yes. Had been improved? Yes. And it's very similar of what our fellows, they were talking about that they're suffering. People think it's too good to be true. That's what we suffer when we have to do a transition like this. We've been suffering that since the last 5 years. It's too good to be true. It's, nobody believe it. And then we decided, okay, fine, let's do it, let's prove it, let's put it, and now what they're going to say. That's where we are right now. So if you guys here in Hawaii want to do the transition, the answer is yes, can be done. And can be using anything, as any fossil fuel. We were talking about electric vehicle. Fine. But why have to be electric? If we have a fuel that can run with our e-combustible, perfectly fine. With a combustion engine like natural gas. You don't need an electric vehicle. You don't need a hydrogen vehicle with cells to put and then to convert it into electrical. So you have many different choices to go nowadays. And that's where the government, they have to take and the politicians, they have to take the decision which direction they want to go. But at least to understand that this exists. They cannot hide anymore. They will have to take decisions. Thank you.
I think we have one last question.
Was there another question? If it's short, we can take it.
Yeah, just real quick, because you say you can use it, is there any type of change or mechanical that you have to change to start running your fuel?
In most industrial application, zero, nothing. We are talking about all the boilers, all the turbines even to produce electricity, gas turbine, we are talking about any oven. In all the industrial application, no. If we are talking about vehicles, like mobile vehicles, then the vehicle have to run with natural gas or with LNG, and then we can replace without doing no modification whatsoever. Thank you.
So let's give it up for Sergio, Mike, Pablo, Bilal, Glenn, and because Jack didn't get a chance to say something at the end, would you like to close us out, Jack?
Now I don't want it anymore.
Okay. Right. So round of applause for the technology panel.
Yeah, I would just close by, I just wanted to add, which is nothing specific to us, but, and the gentleman also brought it up, this is a collaborative approach. An event such as this is the step forward, because this needs the private sector, public sector to come together and do this together, because there's not one technology or one perspective. It's a collaboration of all above.
Totally agreed.
Yeah. That was well worth it. Good job, Jack. All right, we're going to shift panels. We're going to move from the technology panel to our investor panel. So if I could ask the gentlemen that are up here to please take your seats, and you'll be asking questions.
Thank you.
It does say that there's a break between the panels, but we're just going to soldier through. And I get to say that because I was in the Army. So if I could ask our panelists for the investor panel, Costwire, S&E Solution, CKT Investment, and HANA Investment Group, please to come up to the stage.